Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Jakarta Tech Talk, our last Jakarta Tech Talk of 2023, actually. And joining us today is Mike, who will be presenting on the topic of going beyond the era of Java EE. If you have any question for today as we go through our presentation, feel free to ask them in the chat or the Ask a Questions tab. Without any further delay, Mike, over to you.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Serena, very much. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you are. Here in sunny Flemington, New Jersey. Let's see, share my screen real quick, and then we'll get going here. Okay. Okay, so this is Jakarta EE 11, going beyond the era of Java EE. And the inspiration for this talk actually came about by someone asking me to present on Jakarta EE 11 back, early spring timeframe. So I've had some time to put this together. Steve Millage, who's the CEO at Payara, had a blog post from late March, and it was called Jakarta EE 11, the first big leap for Jakarta. And in that blog post, he said, from the initial lift and shift, which is the Jakarta EE 8, we'll talk about that being similar to Java EE 8, to the new namespace change in Jakarta EE 9, to the simplification work in Jakarta EE 10, a lot of effort has gone into making Jakarta EE a solid basis for open source developers to build upon. And after that, he said, well, with that done, there's now the opportunity to start taking Jakarta EE beyond the era of Java EE, which, as most of you know, has a very rich history. With Java 21, and at the time it was on the horizon, there's now the opportunity to make sure Jakarta EE is always leveraging the latest and greatest capabilities of the new Java version, build new specifications, and further unify and simplify the platform. So that I think was just awesome, and it inspired me to put this together. So I hope you have some fun with this. So hi, I'm Michael Redliff. This is all I do. I'm a Java champion. I'm the lead Java Q news editor at InfoQ. I'm also a contract developer advocate and tech writer at Payara. I'm director at the Garden State Java User Group. We just had our final meeting last night, by the way. I'm on the Leadership Council for the Jakarta EE Ambassadors, and committer on the Jakarta NoSQL and Jakarta Data specifications. And I just finished my career back in June with ExxonMobil Research and Engineering, and after 33.5 years. So everything above that is what I do full-time right now. So this is passion that I have for being part of this Java community. So the objectives for today is to talk about the evolution of Java EE and Jakarta EE. Quickly introduce the profiles that are part of the framework, what you can expect in Jakarta EE 11, the number of 16 specifications that will be updated for Jakarta EE 11, and then I'd like to highlight a couple of those with some demos. But first, I have a poll, and I know Serena was very nice enough to put together a crowdcast poll. So if you could just take a quick minute to answer that, I would certainly appreciate it. And I think we'll display the results.
Yes, and if those, for those that are wondering where the poll is, it's just on the right-hand side, right beneath the chat section. You have the question section, and then you see a little graph, and that is the poll section.
So can we display that when I'm sharing my screen, or maybe do a quick summary maybe, or?
So currently, right now, we have what is your familiarities with Jakarta EE? There's still people answering, but the most popular answer is I've built an application using Jakarta EE.
Oh, cool.
We got 4 votes for that. The next one up is I'm familiar with Jakarta EE, but haven't used it. And then the last vote is I am a Jakarta EE expert.
Ah, cool. Uh-oh. So, okay, awesome, great. Yeah, when I first presented this at the Philly Java group, most of the responses, this was in person, of course, but most of the responses were pretty much the bottom 2. So I'm kind of seeing the opposite end of the spectrum. So
Yeah.
great, thanks for answering that, folks. Let's move on. So, all right, so we'll take a look at the evolution over the past, almost 25 years, not quite. This is a running graph of the evolution. So JPE is the original name, which is Java Professional Edition, and this was changed once the Java Community Process Executive Committee was formed in 1998, which, by the way, they just celebrated their 25 years. So back in those days, Jakarta EE, well, Java EE was known as J2 EE to complement J2 SE. So you had Standard Edition and Enterprise Edition. That's where that came from. And so it was in December of 1999. So that's 24 years ago. J2 EE 1.2 was released, was the initial specification. Fast forward to September 2001. J2 EE 1.3 was released, and that featured the introduction of the Java connector architecture, which is now the Jakarta connectors specification. So you'll see a lot of that from the new names in the Jakarta list of specifications relative to the old Java EE names themselves. Also, JMS, or Java Messaging Service, is now in Jakarta Messaging, and so on. So, and then EJB 2.0 was also part of that. And in November of 2003, the introduction of JAX WS was released in J2EE 1.4. December 2009, oops, I missed one. Java EE 5. So this was the name change right here. So you can see there it goes from J2 EE to Java EE. So version 5 was the first with that. So it was May of 2006. And this also too, Java SE 5 was the introduction of the annotation. And so obviously for Java EE, same thing. And then let's see, December 2009 was Java EE 6, and introduction of context and dependency injection. They used to manage beans back then, and that's important too, as you'll see. And the introduction of what we all use today is the REST architecture. So it's obviously highly used in microservices. Java EE 7 released in May of 2013, and then introduction of WebSockets, JSON, and support for HTML5. And Java EE 8 was released in August 2017, and there was support for HTTP2, CDI-based security, and this was, as you can see, the last version of Java EE 8. There will never be a Java EE 9 because right after this release, it was Oracle donated the whole Java EE to the Eclipse Foundation, and then because of branding, it had to be renamed. And this was a community effort for the new name back then. So Jakarta was ultimately selected. And also too was in, I think, sometime in 2018, the name was already chosen, but the reveal of the logo, as you see on the bottom left there with the schooner, that was revealed back then, and so that was a big day. So now, moving forward, September of 2019, Jakarta EE8 was essentially Java EE8. And Oracle allowed the use of the Java X namespace for the time being, but that had to change too. So now you had, what was closed source, now open source. So the big feature for Jakarta EE9 was what they call the Big Bang, and this was the full namespace change from Java X to Jakarta. And I remember there was being a lot of debate on how to implement that. Do we do it a little at a time? Do we do it at one shot? So as it turned out, it was all done in one shot. Jakarta EE 9.1 was in May of 2021, based on Java SE 11. Yeah, so, and then 10, which was released last year in September. Now the baseline was Java SE. Well, I guess it support for SE 17 and Java 11, and is the removal of deprecated items in specifications such as Jakarta Serlet, Jakarta Faces, Jakarta CDI, and so on. And then now, of course, we've come up to coming up to Jakarta EE 11. So, and the planned release date is the first half of next year. So we'll talk about the rest of this presentation on that. So you can see that this was such a rich history going back 24 years. And so it's really exciting that, to see where we've come to where we're going. All right, so we have that on our objectives listed. Taken care of already. So, so now these profiles, there are three: the platform and the web profile and core profile, and we'll talk about those briefly. Platform itself is just a standard for hosting all of the Jakarta EE applications. Now there are a total of 42, at least at my last count, specifications. And but not all of them are part of the platform. There's a whole voting process. There's a whole list of standards that need to be met before that becomes part of the platform. And this is for developers, requiring all the specifications. Okay. And then you can see right here in this graph of what's in the platform, and one of the newest ones here, as you can see in orange, is Jakarta Data, which will have a 1.0 release formally before the Jakarta EE 11 is released. I think we've just implemented milestone 2 of version 1. So you can see in blue which specifications are being updated and which ones are left at their previous versions. Next is the web profile, and this is just simply a subset for what the name implies, for web technologies. Okay. And here's that subset right here. Jakarta Data made it for that as well. Excuse me. And the core profile was introduced in Jakarta EE 10, and this was basically designed for targeting smaller runtimes, especially for microservices and anything that may have ahead of time compilation. Right. So, so this was the intent behind putting that together. So this is here with us now, and there's only looks like 6 or 7 here, and so you can see again which which specifications are updated for that. And so that's where we are done. So, okay, we're done there. All right, so what's new? So this is what we've all been waiting for, right? So the release timeline. The first milestone release is planned for this month. I've been looking at the mailing list to see when everything is finalized. So I'll update this slide once this gets released. A second milestone release is scheduled for either next month or February, and that would depend on the effort required for, with the milestone 1. And then the final release is in June or July of next year. The first milestone basically requires the specifications to give the latest artifacts in terms of the API, the specification documents, and things like that. There's not a requirement at this time for those specifications to pass a TCK at this point, but of course that's going to be ultimately required to do that. I know in Jakarta Data we have been, we have a TCK expert in our set of committers, so we are happy to have him to work on those things. So, all right. Also, so we have new specifications. Now, I mentioned Jakarta Data, but you see MicroProfile JWT Bridge here, and I'm going to talk about that because I think this is an exciting new specification. It's not going to be part of Jakarta EE, but it'll be under the auspices of MicroProfile. But it's interoperability between MicroProfile JWT and Jakarta Security. So you'll learn more about that in a little bit. The managed bean annotation will go away. This was, as you may have heard earlier, used in the early parts of Java EE, but CDI, or context and dependency injection, actually has pretty much taken that over, and it was decided to have that removed. Also, the security manager, oops, a little too, okay, there we go. The security manager class was deprecated in JDK 17. It's not fully removed yet, but in Jakarta EE 11, any references to that class will be removed. So this is already, preparing for the future to ensure that's not being used anymore. So when it's finally removed from whatever version of JDK will come out. All right. There is clarifying the JPMS requirements on the platform. Right. This is just basically vendors are free to create their own API jars that pass signature checks, but they do not have to include a module info class or files on there. So so basically, it's just an optional feature. CDI Lite. And this took me a while to fully understand what the heck this means. And as it turns out, there's really no such thing, right? There's been a lot of discussion on splitting out the integration part of CDI related to the specification text into a separate spec document. So that's where the Lite comes from. And part of this is to resolve any circular dependencies. So, and the ruling of optional has to do because a lot of these specifications, when they're implemented by whatever vendor, sometimes things are optional. All right, so so an individual spec can have optional features, but when a component spec is included in platform, web profile, and core profile, an optional feature must be explicitly declared as required, otherwise it's not required. So basically, this is just, further clarification on optional itself. All right, specification updates on that, and this is just some of the basics. So Jakarta validation, and some of you out there may saying, hey, Mike, isn't that Jakarta bean validation? Yes, but I understand there's an effort to change that, to simplify it, just calling it Jakarta validation. And what's new there is basically the ability for records to support Java records. In Jakarta persistence, records will be used as an embeddable type. And then, of course, Jakarta concurrency with the final virtual threads feature in JDK 21, so there'll be full support for that. Yeah, in Jakarta RESTful Web Services, there's improved integration with Jakarta CDI and Jakarta Security. And Jakarta Security itself, there'll be a new set of APIs for developers to choose their own authorization. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then, of course, the MicroProfile JWT and Jakarta Security, which, of course, I'll explain a little bit more later as well. All right. So, Serena, are there any questions out there yet?
Not yet.
Okay, that's good.
This is a perfect opportunity to ask the audience if they have any questions. Just a reminder to put them in the Ask a Questions tab or in the chat.
Hopefully that means I'm not putting everybody to sleep. So.
Not at all.
So, all right, so let's talk about some of the updated specs in Jakarta EE11. So this is, I think, page 1 of that. You can see them right there, and you saw that in the graph earlier as well. But that's with their version numbers and such. I think I said there were 16. Sounds about right. Okay, so that was that was quick. All right. So it's this, breaking point here. I forgot I had that in there. If kudos to anybody who knows who that character is. So, but all right. So here we go. This is the highlighted specifications with demos. I'm going to demonstrate Payara Cloud, and this is released about a year ago. It's the next generation of fully managed cloud native application runtime. And so it's really nice. I would say I've been working with this, and so I thought I'd share, at least some of the interface and how it works. All right. So MicroProfile JWT Bridge. So this is a collaboration between both working groups for Jakarta EE and MicroProfile. And there was some discussion, started around the summertime, excuse me, and the ability for Jakarta Security to build on MicroProfile JWT authentication. So I don't know if some of you have done this already, but there are Jakarta EE applications that use MicroProfile config, and it just really works well. And so this is the same kind of idea, well, a little more complex, right, than that. But the idea here is to eliminate any duplication of effort and circular dependency. So I've been really, in studying this and being part of the phone conversations or Zoom meetings for this over the summer. I got to learn a little bit more about Jakarta Security, and MicroProfile JWT. So. So you can see here the interoperability with the JWT bridge being in the middle, and both of the other specs accessing it. It was decided to put this in the set of standalone specifications in MicroProfile. I'll give a brief chart of what that means in a minute. And the idea of one of the first orders of business is to move the optional section of MicroProfile authentication to the new bridge spec together with those TCKs. And then there's been some recent movement in a formal definition of what's going to be an annotation. So just to clarify what I meant about the standalone, on the left are the core specifications in MicroProfile. So MicroProfile 6.1 was just released in October. And then the standalone specs on the right, this is where the new JWT bridge will reside. So some of these have been around a while, reactive messaging, for example, and reactive stream operators, context propagation. And then open tracing used to be in the core profile, but then telemetry took over for that. And some of you may already know that open tracing and open senses, join forces to become open telemetry. So you can see how that all evolved. So, just for backwards compatibility for folks who may be using earlier versions, using open tracing, that standalone spec is there for developers. All right, live demo. Here we go. So Jakarta Data is the first one. All right. Okay, so what is Jakarta Data? It's an API that allows easy access to database technologies, essentially. And for those of you familiar, there's Jakarta NoSQL and Jakarta Persistence, which of course has been around for a while. Jakarta Persistence is everybody, the Java Persistence Architecture, or JPA. So the idea behind that is to have something as a, data being the overall spec, and then the other two being kind of underneath that. So you can, whether you're writing a NoSQL application or a relational database application, you can actually get a lot of the features from Jakarta Data, especially is in the second part here is a repository interface. Okay, current version is milestone 2, as I mentioned earlier. And then for Jakarta E11 version 1, of course. And there's no formal compatible implementations as of yet, but Open Liberty has been very active in supporting Jakarta Data and putting examples out there and things like this. But also Micronaut, Quarkus, Hibernate, and Wildfly will also be part of a compatible implementation. We have Gavin King from the Hibernate as a new committer, so so you have his support in that as well. So look for more information on that as we get closer to the release of Jakarta EE11. So what's new here? There is a new basic repository interface to, as the name implies, put any basic repository methods in here. So just as a clarification, if you look at the GitHub here, is we have a data repository interface that has nothing. So you can implement off of that and create your own find all or delete all or save by, whatever kind of methods in there. Or you can off a basic repository is CRUD repository, which create, update, delete, or pageable repository, which is underneath basic repository. So you can use any of those predefined, and then of course you can add your own as well. So you can use some of the other ones as a starting point. So that's the method behind the madness there. There are new insert and update methods in the CRUD repository interface, and then new annotations, which I've not had a chance to experiment with yet. But these will be available, for Jakarta Data applications. All right, so I'm going to flip over to. All right, one of these fine days, I will have a REST application for this. But what I have here is a beer database, and it's a MongoDB. So you can see here, what's in the beer collection and what's in the brewer collection. So there's the two collections in there for that. So you can look at this. This is available out there for you. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on the POJOs. But what I wanted to point out was, because we're working with a NoSQL database, we need to use the column, entity, and ID annotations from there. So entity, of course, is that annotation is wrapped around the beer class. The ID annotation is wrapped around obviously the ID, and then of course with column. What I like about this column annotation is because a lot of times, I guess there's sort of the standard naming conventions. I like to use brewer ID. In this case, is brewer ID. I'll make that a little bit big. But in the database, it's listed as brewer_ID. So that's where you can wire the two together. So that's kind of convenient. So the same thing for a brewer, right? And I have the builder app, parts of this as well. So basically, I'm just going to store the name, the city, and the state. And that's nothing too fancy here. There's also a beer type enumeration, so just make things a little easier. All right, so let's see. So I have corresponding repositories for each of those POJOs. So beer repository will extend. We're going to use Pageable, and so we already have. There's a find by name, find by brewer ID, and then we can use named parameters in queries, which I had set up over here. Right. And similarly with the brewer repository, the same kind of thing. So, all right, and all the nuts and bolts happen here in the application. This is a command line application, so I've been working on some other things here, and you can play around with these at your leisure. But this will be evergreen, by the way. So, yeah, so you can have in a Java SE application, you can have a container. And that's what this is right here. So you initiate it that way, and then you use that container variable, and then you can get your repositories going that way. So the first thing we'll do is we'll get the number of beers in the database, get the number of brewers. And as you can see, there are 34 brewers. There are 32 beers. We're going to add one to that. So a lot of this stuff is just, background stuff. So we'll create a new brewer here today. And this is out of Westerly, Rhode Island. And then one of their beers is Dave's Coffee Stout. So you can see how I get that together. And then I'm using the brewer repository and using the save method for that, and similarly for the beer repository and using the save method for that. So, and then again, it's it'll be too time consuming to go through everything. We'll run it. I know that's kind of dangerous sometimes. So I hope everybody can still see what's going on here. A little bit bigger. And it's just easier if I just do NVN. And I'm just going to put it to out.txt and just, it's just easier to peruse the results real quick. Now, apparently, hopefully nothing went bad here. So, yeah.
Mike, maybe just make the screen a little bit bigger.
Okay, sure. Uh-oh. What happened here? Did I not compile it? That would help. So, yeah. Oh, I know. All right. It would help if I recompile. I tend to do an MVN clean and then update the repository, so that's just my OCD kicking in. Take a few seconds here. All right, so let's see. We probably get some new output from here. Yes. All right, so here we go. So now we're running. so it says here there are 32 beers, 34 brewers, right? Okay, perfect. And I should have entered, if this all ran correctly, it should be a new brewer and a new, yes, so we have a 33rd beer here. And then we got Dave's Coffee Stout, and then our brewer. We have a 35th, yep, so everything is good. So we've entered our, yep, Graysdale, and Westerly, Rhode Island. All right, perfect. So, whew, yeah, and yeah, so that's that. And again, you can have the opportunity to clone the repo, and if you have any feedback or whatever, I'd appreciate that. All right, I think we're doing okay on time. So I have enough time for like 3 hours, right, Serena? Believe me,
we have another 25 minutes to this talk,
okay.
But we can't wait to have you come back in the new year, Mike.
No, I'll try to. Yeah, so the rest of this is actually a little bit quicker. That one was a little more time consuming. So, all right. So Jakarta Security. So this is a set of for creating secure Jakarta EE applications, right? It's pretty much standard what that does. So the current version now is 3.0. It'll be 4.0 for Jakarta EE11. Compatible implementations is Eclipse Soteria 3.02, and then as last I checked, it was a to be determined version of that for Jakarta EE11. So one of the new things is a user choice of authentication mechanisms. There's a whole bunch out there, quite a few. And then I mentioned the interoperability with MicroProfile JWT. And this is an alternative to the roles allowed annotation. That's actually defined in Jakarta annotations. And one of the things is that there was no CDI component to it. Yes. So so that's the idea, to come up with their own annotations for that. Okay. And again, references to security manager class have been removed. All right. So let's fire over to Jakarta Security. Okay. Wait. All right. And you'll see I have some other specifications in here, just because they seem like fun. But here's security right here. All right. So we'll start with the identity store, which is one of the ways. And of course, you don't want to necessarily do this in production with clear texts, usernames, and passwords. But here's how we define all that. All right. And I have, I've given myself in roles as an admin and for audit. And I forget what the other one was at the moment, maybe just user. So that's, how you would do that. And then application config, yes. So in this case, what we're going to do is it's a servlet in this case. Okay, so we're going to get the username and all that, and then this will provide, or this will show whether I have any of these roles. So I have that ready to go here. Here it is. So with the URLs, which I have in the documentation, by the way. Hello. So, are we not working? That's not good. Lovely. And then the others working here. Oh wait, hold on. Maybe I'm using the wrong one here. Hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay, I was hitting a wrong link. Okay. Phew. So for each of these, I have, so this URL is available. It's in the documentation, as I mentioned. So this is sort of a landing page, welcome page, whatever you want to call it, right? So, so proceed to the main application. So it's going to ask for a sign in. So I came up with Mike, and then it's the typical password for the password, which of course you don't, you know. And there we go. So it says my name is Mike, and it has the role of admin true, the role of audit true, and the role of user false, which I think in the real world you'd want to have that as, you know, as well. But you see what I mean. So that's how that works right there. See where you want to go again. All right. Servlet is next, and I think I bypassed the JWT Bridge privilege, so we'll do that at the end. All right, so Jakarta Serlet, of course, you know, the old Java Servlet API has been around for a long time. All right, so I don't think I need to explain what a servlet is. And so yeah, so current version is 6. The new version will be 6.1, and in Glassfish 7 milestone 4 was the current implementation. Now it's to be determined, but the latest Glassfish is 7.0.10 or 11 or something to that effect. They just, I think it's 11, and they just came out, you know, this new minor release they had within the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, so so what's new? Yeah, allow control of status code and response body when sending a redirect is one of the things, and add a query string attribute to any error dispatches, and constants for new HTTP status codes. And then again, you'll see this is a common theme, of course, right? References to security manager class have been removed. All right, and so, oops. So since we're doing with the servlet, a lot of this will look familiar, of course. But in this case, we have a couple other things here. There is this coffee dashboard servlet, okay, and that'll print out some stuff based on a user response. So the endpoint is /coffee dashboard, but the user will have to select his or her preferences first. So you can see where we define all that on the different, there's a list of coffee types. You can select which ones, more than one, if as your favorite. All right, so we'll see how that works. And all right. So yeah, very much the same. I try to keep these consistent, right? So so you can see the different examples here. There's a basic REST application, nothing too exciting, right? You know, it gives you a JSON, hello, Mike, whatever. So we want the coffee shop preferences. So as you can see here, and I need to pretty this up a little bit, but select your coffee preference. So let's choose. So I do like milk in my coffee, so a latte and a cold brew. So when we hit submit on that, it'll come up with the coffee dashboard endpoint, as you see on the top of the browser bar there. And then all that text was defined, and it basically, you know, displays that for you. So that was kind of neat. So, time is it 10:44? All right. So we have till the top of the hour, Serena?
Yes, we do.
Okay, cool. All right. So I think oh yeah, I didn't do the demo for JWT Bridge. Let me do that real quick. Overall, it was kind of interesting. I know, you know, a lot of the early documentation for JWT Bridge was this huge, you know, first of all, a very long name for an annotation, and then the parameters inside it. And I wanted at least to have it compile. Whether it worked or not, you know, I didn't care at that point, right? But I just wanted it to compile because I wanted to really see, you know, the nuts and bolts of this as well. So in it, so in the application itself, so you see the familiar web servlet annotations. It has the, defines the JWT bridge endpoint. We're going to use declare roles, which also is part of Jakarta annotations. So you see here admin, right? So these are the roles that will be defined. So, and then here we're going to allow admin in the security servlet. So this is the highlighted annotation. So JWT authentication mechanism definition. That's a mouthful. And it had all these in here. And when I was first writing this up, none of this obviously made sense. I'm like, well, there's got to be a definition somewhere. So they didn't exist yet. So I kind of confirmed that with those that are involved in in Jakarta Security. So I went ahead and I went and said, all right, let's create this. And so that's what I did. Put these in here, and then I created corresponding to the parameters. We'll just open up this one. So again, whether these will be final definitions, I don't know, but to my surprise, everything actually worked. And I do have that here. Demo. And then please proceed to the main application. And the same thing, I think I created Mike. Now I think let's play a little bit. If we put in here Joe and some blah 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 password, it'll come back and say, oh, try again. So, okay. So yeah, this is different. Basically here I put some stuff, just put some information on the screen. A real app will have a lot more than that. It'll give you to a landing page and all that good stuff. So the same thing. This was in the application itself. Yeah. So I put all these in here, and I do have, again, I have a lot of stuff commented out and just experimenting and such. So I totally plan on evolving this to something more that'll for the bridge itself. So yeah, but that's pretty much that. So again, I'm looking forward to more of this. And go back to Keynote. We'll try to get things wrapped up here. Okay. All right. So if you want to get involved, please consider contributing. And I always like to say this because it was mentioned to me. I think David Blevins from Tommy Tribe. He says you don't have to contribute code. Look at the issues in a GitHub repo. Look at or if you experiment with something and something goes wrong, you can do an issue. You can do a pull request. You can contribute to documentation, and so that these are the things that we look for from the community, and it's not, like I said, not just code. And then if you have a working Jakarta EE application and you'd like to show it off, contact your local Java group, and because we always look for speakers, and you got something new and exciting to share, give us a call. I mean, we'd love to have you. So that's, I wanted to mention that. And just some acknowledgments, Steve Millich, of course, for his wonderful blog post, David Blevins, and Otavio Santano, who's the lead spec lead on Jakarta Data and Jakarta NoSQL, and Adam Yoho from IBM. And so he answered a lot of my questions for for Jakarta Security and MicroProfile JWT Bridge. So I appreciate everybody's help with a lot of this. So yeah, just some contact info here. I have a portfolio page. You can check out anything that other presentations that I may have that I'd like to present. I probably need to update some of those. And then my GitHub repo is at the very bottom there. and it's too early in the day for me to have one of these, but I always like to show this picture at the end, and as a way of saying thanks, and you know, surviving my presentation. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation and demo today. I'm just going to do a quick reminder for if you guys have any questions for Mike. Now's the time to ask them as we wrap things up. So we are kicking off the year. Like I said, Mike, you're our last Tech Talk of 2023. So we're looking for some new Tech Talk submissions for the new year. We're already starting to book the month of February. We got a couple of talks in for January. So it's exciting times, Jakarta, lots of great information to share. So take some time to fill out the form. I do see a couple of familiar names in the audience here today. So, now is the time to get preferred dates in. Also, not too late where I am that's from Edward Cheeseman, Mike, with regards to the beer. That's awesome. That's awesome, Edward. So it doesn't look like there's any questions for you, Mike. So again, we always look for your feedback. So of the Tech Talk program. So once this wraps up here, please fill out the survey that will pop up and let us know if you enjoyed the talk. So thank you again, Mike. Thank you everyone for tuning in with us today, and you have yourselves a wonderful day.
Okay.
Take care.
Thanks everyone, and thanks Serena for hosting.
My pleasure. Thank you.